Hello everybody, it's Shakes. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Today I'm going to be going over the top 5 best competitive games you can play right now. Now there's a lot that goes into making and sustaining a good competitive FPS game, from the balance, to the update frequency, to the esports scene, to even the price. But certain games just seem to hit all of these points, well, more or less. So anyway, in this video I'm going to be going over my top 5 best competitive FPS games and 2 honorable mentions, so without further ado, let's just jump into number 5. Number 5 on the list of the best competitive FPS games has to be QUAKE Champions. If you know anything about the history of first-person shooters at all, you're probably pretty familiar with the QUAKE franchise. It was one of the first introductions the gaming industry had to shooters from the first-person perspective, and its later iterations kept the series alive and well. QUAKE Champions is the latest in the series, and has added classes with differing abilities to reach a broader audience, so gone are the days where the only people playing QUAKE are only the most seasoned of gamers. The newest iteration has surprisingly impressive graphics and polish, but hasn't lost the grueling essence of the gameplay. It's one of the best games if you wish to have your aim skills put to the test, alongside understanding and integrating skillful movement into the mix. With how rewarding getting good and absolutely dominating matches can be once you put in the time, this game had to make the list. The main reason it's not any higher in the ranks of this video is simply because the player base is seemingly more lacking than many of the other games I'll talk about later, which makes wait times longer and strong developer support more of a hope than a reality. I'm not saying that this means the game is going to be abandoned, but having less players playing per day than I have subscribers makes me just a little bit worried for its future. Until then, I'll just keep hopping in and getting smoked by the one dude with a 15 kill streak.
This is a bucket.
Dear God.
There's more.
No.
Now number 4 on this list holds a very special place in my heart, so I tried my absolute best not to be too biased. Team Fortress 2 is still one of the best competitive FPS games to date, and if you're looking for a game with deep complexities alongside a very seemingly casual facade, you've come to the right place. While the 9 core classes seem pretty simple and easy to pick up, each class has loads of important strategies and playstyles that it can take you thousands of hours just to learn a few. The best part is that while these complexities do exist for the more hardcore players, you can have loads of fun with little understanding of the game, provided the enemy team doesn't just steamroll yours the entire time. In a typical casual match, there are enough players to pick up your slack if you're just taking off your training wheels, so you can learn at your own pace. With hundreds of unlockable weapons, there's a lot of depth for you to explore, but not so much that you'll drown in your first few hours. However, TF2 suffers from 2 major problems that don't allow it to make it any higher on this list as much as I'd like it to be. Number 1, the in-game competitive system is seemingly dead and unsupervised, so the game can't really play as smoothly as it does in regulated third-party leagues, which wouldn't be too large of a problem if TF2's second issue wasn't so massive. Valve is incredibly slow at releasing updates. The last major update, or even semi-major update, came more than 2 years ago. With that kind of speed, it's a miracle that this game is still alive and well, but the more pressing issues like weapon balance and class limits, at least in competitive, just seem like a lost cause being fixed in the main game. The rift between the casual and competitive communities, on top of the lack of consistent updates, prevents this gem from truly being amongst the best competitive FPS games of all time, but it sure as hell is a game worth getting into. Also, please remove random crits. Please! We've been asking for so long! But yeah, still, TF2, cool game. Cool. You know, I once heard a riddle which I made up, that with every list that includes Team Fortress 2 in it will have to include Overwatch in it. Yes, Overwatch has made the 3rd spot because of surprisingly many of the opposite reasons TF2 has. While its heroes and abilities are seemingly not quite simple, the heroes themselves don't usually hold as much depth and nuance, making for a game more about changing your heroes to counter the opposite team over outplaying them, especially more so in recent years. On top of that, the game has a properly sponsored competitive scene, the Overwatch League, and so much support from Blizzard for it that it couldn't help itself from being such a strong esport. The in-game competitive mode is the most populated game mode, contrary to TF2, and the game itself seems in a pretty healthy state for a competitive FPS, albeit a few hero balances. It has a larger audience than both the previous games combined, and has strong developer support and a lot of content on Twitch and YouTube to keep its community satisfied. It's a mix of a MOBA and an FPS in the sense that it has a lot of abilities and ultimates in a MOBA style, but also isn't actually an FPS game, which adds a lot of complexity you wouldn't usually find in shooters. There isn't much that's objectively wrong with the game, so give it a shot, or just look up a video as to why some random streamer or YouTuber is leaving and hates it. Your choice.
If I roll, I'll take the large window. You guys take the rest. You got it?
Yep, go. Gotcha.
You guys, you good?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Wait. What? You all right?
Yeah, all good.
All right, sit up. Round 3. 1, 2, 3.
There aren't many games that can boast a considerably larger player base amount than its release over 4 years ago, but somehow Rainbow Six Siege is one of them. Now personally, as much time as I have in the game, I still don't get a lot of it, and I think that's great. Rainbow Six is a game about infiltrating or protecting a series of objectives within rather small and confined maps based around generally different housing structures and the like. There are a ton of different operators for each clan, group, what are these guys again? There are a ton of different operators for each side that all house different weapons, gadgets, and abilities, which adds a lot of depth and learning for you to get into. The many breakable walls and potential pathways give this game so many possibilities and how to play, and with a vast list of operators, it will really get hard to get bored of this game. Half the times you die, you're wondering, how did he get there, or what setup was he using, or why do I suck so much at video games? It's truly a great experience. The pro scene seems pretty lively with many sponsors and major events, and on top of the great developer support, it's hard to bring up concrete negatives about this game. It's a pretty solid experience overall, but it won't appeal to everyone. It also is a game that goes for money, or a product as normal humans call it, so unlike the first two options, it's a little harder to get your hands on. But as I say, you get what you pay for. Which will later be entirely debunked by the later games I speak about in this video, so pretend I never said that. Anyway though, like Overwatch, it's a game you really need to try first before deciding if you'll enjoy it or not, because it really doesn't play or feel like your average shooter, and sometimes that alone can turn off or turn on your enjoyment of the game. The player base is still rising each year for a ton of different reasons, so it seems like the game is only getting better, and I think Ubisoft would love to have you come aboard. Or they'll just release another terrible Assassin's Creed game, your choice. Or more so theirs.
Hello, motherfucker.
Activision has finally pulled off a feat many thought could never be done ever again. They've made a Call of Duty game that everyone doesn't completely hate. Incredible, I know. Jokes aside though, this game is pretty damn solid. There's a ton of interesting weapon customization which can get you into a rabbit hole of testing which of each 100 customizations make your loadout the sweatiest it can be, and honestly that can be a lot of fun. For me at least, some of my most entertaining experiences in games of this sort is trying to figure out how to make a weapon or loadout the absolute best it can be, and experimenting with weirder setups can be an absolute blast. The game has still a very strong player base, but suffers from bad maps, spawns, and campers, as COD games tend to. There isn't really a real competitive scene, but Call of Duty has never really been known for having one, so if you weren't expecting anything, that shouldn't come as too much of a disappointment. The biggest reason it got skimped out of the top 5 is it just isn't really a skill-based game. It's Call of Duty. You point, you click, and most of the time they die. There isn't much that separates someone with 100 hours versus someone with 1,000 hours, especially compared to the other games in this list, which makes putting time into this game not really as worthy an investment if you wish to have an experience where you're constantly getting better. Not to say that that should ever really be your focus, as video games are meant to be fun, but you get my point. It's a blast with friends, and the new Battle Royale is sure to be a grand old mess, so pick it up if you want a game that's fun but doesn't require hundreds of hours to get good. Or just wait a couple months until this $60 purchase becomes entirely obsolete by the new Call of Duty 27. I personally am just not a Battle Royale fan, so it's hard for me to recommend any of these kinds of games easily, but what Apex offers is so much more than just another PUBG or Fortnite that it at least had to be an honorable mention. The fun and dynamic movement like sliding and climbing alongside the lack of fall damage makes the most tedious and time-consuming parts of BR games, the running around and looting, so much more enjoyable. It's quite easy to find weapons that are top tier, so having guns that can stand a chance is commonplace, unlike many other Battle Royales, where if you find a rare gun it's a guaranteed win, and if you don't you're just playing at a massive disadvantage. In Apex, it's more about positioning and choosing your fights over getting the best gear and how you can use your team's abilities to their maximum potential. The abilities and ultimates are pretty fun to use, like Pathfinder's Grapple Hook or Bloodhound's Beast of the Hunt, and the game is free, so there's no reason not to try it. The legends seem to be a bit unbalanced, but their balance changes and new seasons relatively often, so it shouldn't be an issue for too long. Also, now is probably the best time to talk about how great the pinging system is. Like, I wish every game in the genre did it like this, because it's so easy to tell your teammates where specific guns are, or where you plan to go, or where you're getting shot at from an enemy, or really just to spam it to annoy your teammates. However, the largest problems with this game are primarily packaged with the common traits of Battle Royales. The party sizes are very specific, in this case 3 people, and you can't always expect to have 2 other friends ready to hop into a match, so bad communication and teamwork is quite common. Also, being a battle royale, the fact that luck plays a large role in deciding how good the loot you find is can often take too much power from your hands to be considered a top competitive game. Even when PUBG and Fortnite were at their absolute largest player bases, the events were always seen as a bit of a mess because that much randomness injected into any seemingly competitive game just makes skill seem not as important as getting lucky. Third partying is also a pretty large problem in this game, especially at the higher ranks, where teams just find other teams battling it out and just wait until the battle finishes, and then just swoop in on the injured winners and easily beat them and take all the loot. Those nitpicks aside though, if you want an entertaining battle royale game, there's not a single game I can recommend that comes close in my opinion, and also in my humble opinion, it is also the most competitively viable one. And yeah, without further ado, the #1 best competitive FPS game. Take a guess. How about this? If you guess wrong, you have to give this video a like. Good idea? Well, okay. Counter-Strike Next on Zombies. Now, as you probably guessed, CSNZ, as you'd probably call it, is a masterpiece of a competitive FPS game. As you can see in this gameplay, the Megalodon zombie boss fight is easily one of the most skill-based and exhilarating battles you can get in gaming, and you cannot get gameplay like this from any other games in the genre. The CSGO player base has been rising to new heights and gaining tens of thousands of new players per day recently, and the gameplay really speaks for itself. It's simply one of the hardest to master video games of all time, with positioning, movement, recoil control, aim mechanics, economy, weapon choice, grenade usage, and a bunch of other skills that can take thousands of hours to refine. The game does not cater to new players by any means, but still has a fantastic community of content creators ready to help you learn, myself included. It has the largest esports scene of any FPS game ever, and even its own battle royale and skin economy if you care about either of those things. It's free to play, but I honestly recommend getting the $15 CSGO Prime status upgrade so you don't get into any matches with cheaters and griefers and the like, but you can still earn the Prime status by getting to level 21 on the free version. It's not the easiest game, it's not the most forgiving game, but it's hard to argue that it's not the best competitive FPS shooter of all time. FPS shooter, first person shooter, FPS game. Thanks for watching. Well, that'll have to be my top 5 best competitive FPS games, and if you guys have any others in mind, just leave them in the comments. Like the video if you play video games, subscribe if you have socks on, and I hope to see you guys in my next video. Peace out, guys. Or just peace. Don't go out. Don't leave me, please.